welcome to Brain Balance Live. I just love that opening music, Heather. It just gets me dancing and feeling good. How about you?
Me too. It's like, no matter what's happening, that's going to put you in a good mood.
That's right. I can think of that theme song before I even hear it at the beginning of my day. I'm like, oh, it's Monday. I get dun, 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 dun,
I've even been to listen to it when I'm working late at night. I'm getting tired. I'll just listen to a couple of bars of that. And I'm like, okay, let's keep going.
I'm ready. Welcome to the show, everybody. Every week I get to come here and Heather shares her knowledge with me. She is a board certified cognitive specialist. She's a therapist. She is a national autism summit speaker, and she is just an overall wealth of knowledge. If you haven't met Heather in person, it would shock me actually, because Heather's so involved with her community, and she really is all about getting you help. I'm a fellow brain balance mom myself, and I just can't even tell you the world of difference it has made. So Heather, thank you so much for talking with me each week.
Thank you. I think you're the voice of so many parents out there, and it's so fun to do these with you. I'm grateful for you.
Thank you so much. What are we going to be enlightening ourselves about today?
This is just a big pickle for so many parents. How do I find the middle ground between just total hands off and my kids never turn in their assignments? And this can be virtual learning or homework, and being the villain. I'm the bad guy because I'm trying to make sure they get their stuff done. I care about their future.
Yes. I love these notes so much. I really do try to do these things. And some of them do go against my nature because, I was what do we call it? Neurotypical. And so, I'm getting so smart. So I don't always know these tips, and I think these are really helpful.
Good. Yes. I mean, there is a middle ground, and we're going to talk about how you find it today. And I think it'll make a world of difference. And some of it does go against instinct, and that's the tricky part.
Yes. So you're going to give us some tools and some even phrases, I think, to help us, adjust kind of our way of thinking.
Yes. So much, like many other topics, so much of this is about how we communicate with, not at, our kids. We're not talking about lectures. We're not talking about arguments, because those won't get you anywhere. They're frustrating for both sides.
Yes.
And for the vast majority of human beings on the planet of any age, we don't want to have to hover over other people. As I oversee centers, I'm not a hoverer.
Say that 5 times fast.
I know, right? And most people don't like that, because it automatically is like, you don't trust me. You don't think I'm competent. And some of you out there saying, yes, my kids are struggling. That's why I'm doing it. I get it. We've talked before, and of course, some of these will be adjusted based on, it's always about developmental age, not chronological age. But what are these tweens and teens seeking? They're seeking autonomy, competence, independence, responsibility. And even when they're irresponsible in some of their actions. So this is going to take some pressure off you. When you convey, I know that you're wanting to prove your independence and that you're responsible. You've probably talked about some benefits and privileges that will come along with that. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that. What is that saying? The parent is giving the child what they want. I am going to release the reins a little bit on this homework. Now, you're still going to be involved. We're going to talk about that. But you already have their attention. Really? Yeah, you can even say, I know you don't like it when you feel like I'm looking over your shoulder. Yeah. You can talk about why you do that, but this is your chance. So we want, as always, I talk about metacognitive questioning, open-ended questions all the time, where kids start thinking about their thinking. They have to start thinking about, where are their struggles? Which parts kind of click for them? So instead of saying, get started on your homework, that's very directive, very instructional based. I'm talking at my child, telling them what to do. You can say, how might it benefit you to get your homework done before dinner? And you're not talking about how it benefits you, the parent. They're thinking about how it benefits them. I mean, human nature is, what's in it for me, especially for kids, right?
Yes.
And so have them answer that question.
I love that.
Yeah, this is huge. And they're thinking, my parent is trying to help me get what I want. And you are. and you're getting what you want, because it's a burden. I'm telling you, I had 2 boys in the same grade. One had been held back a year. They were 13 months apart. And with every fiber of my being, it was very hard for me to not be too on top of it. But we've got to teach our kids to be independent. Even though some of the expectations of independence don't really arrive till late elementary and for sure by middle school, those skills have to be growing before they get there. It's just like throwing them to the fire if we're not prepping them for this.
I love that. How might this benefit you? Because like, I feel like I've taken positive steps in my telling the real life consequences of, not doing the thing. So like, I think I'm doing well with that, but this takes it even one step further to exactly what you're saying. I always joke with Corey. I say, I feel like kids, the reason they can get you to do what they want is because they have one thing to do in life if their basic needs are met, and that is to get what they want. And so they'll bug you about it and do whatever they can to get what they want. And a lot of times they'll get it because they're persistent.
Yes. They wear the parents down and finally like, if this will make this stop, okay.
Yes, exactly. So I love that twist, that flip of how does this benefit you? I love that.
A lot of times in general, we know this goes against Pavlov. It goes against what used to be thought to work. Decades of research show us that the reward and punishment system are not the way to find lasting change. Yeah. However, there are natural rewards and natural consequences that come from kids doing what they're supposed to do or not doing it, and letting them experience those is hugely beneficial. And you're not the bad guy, the consequence they face because they didn't finish it, right?
Yes.
And so, or the reward, hey, I get to hang out with my friends right now it might be on the computer screen,
on Zoom.
Or I get to watch a movie because I didn't piddle around. I did a show a while back about how kids do not enjoy the time that they're avoiding tasks nearly as much as they would if they had finished what they need to do, because that is nagging at them, even when there are often not signs.
I don't know anybody that doesn't put things off that they have to do. I'll do a million things before I do the thing that I know I need to do.
Yes. This is a collaborative process. And so, if I've always talked about being transparent with your kids, and if they struggle with focus and so do you say, I sometimes struggle to stay on task also. I found this XYZ technique that works great for me. Would you like for me to share it with you? You're not imposing it on them. You've told them the benefit of it. What do you think, even better than a yes, no question, what do you think about me sharing that with you? And you can even keep the lines of communication more open by saying, I know it may not work the same for you as it does for me, but we can experiment and play around and find what works for you. What do you think about that?
I love that. That gets them involved.
It does. They have a voice. Kids, the more control kids feel on an appropriate level, the more open they're going to be to what you say. It's not like you're trying to dictate what I do, when I do, how I do it. They sometimes lack the big picture to understand where it's coming from, and you're just the bad guy, even though you're not.
Yes. Yes.
So think about collaboration in helping them investigate and explore and think through the process instead of instructing and directing. That will relieve so much tension. That's huge.
That is huge.
And then let them know, I am always here when you need support. And it's for the older kids this becomes more and more important too. And so are your teachers. So, but a lot of kids don't ask for help. Why is that? One reason is that some kids legitimately think they're doing fine. So if they say, I don't need help, everything's going fine, you can say, how is that compared to the grade you're seeing coming back? We know that success in life is much more broadly defined than grades, but it is a huge metric. So if they're failing or have D's barely skating by and they're saying everything's fine, ask them, how does that compare to the marks you're getting back on your papers? And your tone of voice is so important here.
Yes.
And I talk about open-ended questions, how questions, what questions, why questions, But when you ask why questions, one caveat that's really important is, why would you say that? Well, how you say it matters so much. In fact, there's a book I'm going to recommend later that is like, don't ask why questions because of how they're delivered. Why questions are fantastic. You want to think about having conversations with your kids and the way you would with a friend, the way you would with a guest. If a guest left their jacket at your house, how would you let them know that? You wouldn't be saying, you left your jacket at my house again.
Why did you do that?
Why did you do that? Yeah. So think about how you would talk to a friend or a guest. And I know it's not the same thing because these are challenges, struggles that you're in the trenches every day, and you have a right to be frustrated, have your settling time, work out your emotions on this a different way so that you can be their calm, safe space. But a lot of kids also don't want to stand out. I don't want to ask the teacher questions. I don't want to ask my parent for help because they're already harping on me. See, by backing this down and letting them know you're going to let go of the reins some, this won't be an excuse anymore. But it might be, I don't want to stand out. I already feel different from my other classmates. I don't want to be more different. A lot of kids really cannot wrap their heads around where their struggles are. Almost always, if kids are having difficulty getting started on tasks or continuing their focus on tasks through to completion, procrastination, task avoidance, planning, organizing, these are executive function skills that you hear me talk about all the time. They start growing in infancy. So just because if you're sitting here watching and your child is in 3rd grade, you say, well, I don't have to worry about this yet. It does matter. Because these start growing in infancy so that kids are ready when the time comes for them to be independent. And so we always want to be taking these steps toward autonomy and problem solving, and without us providing the answer. So often we see an issue and we're like, here's what we're going to do. Instead, we want to involve them in the process and help them see multiple paths around a goal, because it's not your job to motivate your kids. It is our jobs to get our kids engaged. And motivation and hope go through the roof when we teach them to find paths around their setbacks. So do they know that they have an issue, or they know they have an issue, but they don't know what it is, or they're embarrassed, ashamed, don't want to stand out? Self-advocacy is expected to be pretty much fully in place in typical development no later than 7th grade. And Bess is going to pop up a slide just so that you can see some of those self-advocacy skills. And so confirming due dates and what the instructions are to determine the relative urgency, really understanding this assignment is not due for 3 weeks. This one is due in 3 days. I need to tackle this one first. That is a time management skill that's part of executive function. A fantastic idea, even for kids who do not have 504s or IEPs, is have the student, again, if they are developmentally able, go to the teacher and say, when I write down assignments in my planner, can you verify that I have it down correctly and the due date is right? And have them initial it. And so you can do it with the teachers if the kids aren't ready yet, but I highly recommend having the kids do that. That might be a nice little segue into self-advocacy. So have them tell you or the teacher, depending on developmental age, the directions on an assignment to ensure they understand all parts of the projects. If they just regurgitate what they heard someone else say, or they just regurgitate what is written on the paper, it doesn't mean they understand. It means they can read it.
Yeah. So so much of this is singing like straight. I can relate to so much of this, Heather. This is so great.
And this is huge. Even when frustrated, they assume, parents and teachers for parents, you want your kids to succeed. The teacher wants the whole class to succeed. That thing of it's not fair from last week, or people are out to get me. Is not, if I think that, I am not going to seek help. Right?
Yeah.
And so helping kids see multiple sides of the coin and what happened, and in talking through it and helping them see how they might have talked them through, ask guided questions to help them see how they may be misperceiving the parent or the teacher and how they feel about the student. Determines points of confusion, jots down clarification questions. They're starting to pinpoint where they struggle. They write down those questions. They schedule a time with the teacher for assistance on specific questions. And then they know how to record the information. Maybe they're going to record it on audio so they can listen later. Maybe they're going to take notes. What works for this student? And they still ask follow-up questions. Sometimes kids will ask one set of questions. I still didn't understand, so I just can't do it. Very all or nothing thinking.
Okay.
They need to know that you're going to jot down these questions. You're going to meet with the teacher. You're going to record in a way that works for you, what you learned in there. And then you still ask follow-up questions. Practice this at home with chores or anything.
And just say, how might that benefit you every single time?
All the time. It is guided towards how is this benefiting you? How is this going to help you reach your goal of going into this school or to pursuing this degree? Or if it's not that deep yet, how will this benefit you in having more time with your friends where homework takes half the amount of time?
Yeah.
And get people, we won't breathe down your neck because you're past, it can be even things that seem superficial, but some meaning to them is better than nothing. And establishing timelines, seeking support to ensure a follow through. So I've said this before, but they need to learn how to have these tent poles of where I'm going to be on this assignment, not just what the end due date is. If this research paper is due in 2 months, what do I need to have done 2 weeks from now, a month from now, and so on? That keeps them on track.
What do you do when my son would rather just write the whole thing all at once? We have he's only in 4th grade right now, so that's a little different, but he has these 5-paragraph essays that he's having to regularly write for language arts. And consistently, he does not want to write them until the whole thing is due.
Part of that will be helped by celebrating small victories along the way. Which we've talked about in other shows. And the other thing about rewards, we talked about how rewards and punishments are except when they're very organic to what happens. Mm-hmm. The student faces the consequences of not finishing this when they should have, or the reward of getting it done. So now you get to go do this with your friend. But having little victories, noticing new strategies they use that they haven't used before. You used a graphic organizer. I noticed that. That was such a creative idea. How did that work for you? And really celebrating that they met that 2-week timeline or that 3-day timeline before it gets to the final project. They feel more wins accumulating, and that really gets momentum going.
Oh, that's great. Yes, we need those small wins along the way.
We do. All or nothing thinking is, we've got to celebrate the small successes because you turn it in late again. What did they improve on?
Yeah.
That's what we need to notice, because the other things will come along with it. But showing the parent or the teacher, depending on development, progress along the way. And when kids are not expecting a reward, you surprise them with something. It doesn't mean you have to do it every time, but even periodic, an actual reward that you didn't promise them, like carrot and stick as a reward for doing it. It was something spontaneous that surprised them. That works better than when you kind of quote unquote bribe them in order to do it. You didn't bribe them. You did this because they were on top of it. And that encourages more of the same.
I have to tell you, Corey Warren did that by himself the other day, randomly.
He did.
He sure did. Roger was very kind at being helpful to his brother. And, they're your average brothers, man. They fight like cats and dogs, but they love each other very much. And he happened to be very helpful to his 5-year-old brother. And Corey rewarded him with $10 more on his allowance for being so helpful to his brother. And he just...
That's awesome. Celebrating the character traits that it took. We can take this away best now. Thank you so much. The more organic the reward is, that's super closely related to what was happening, tends to go even better. But any surprise like that, you think that's not going to motivate that young man?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was super excited. Yeah.
Now, as you are releasing the reins a little bit, know that sometimes students won't ask for help because they're testing you. Mom or dad said they're going to back off. I'm not going to ask for help. Let's see what happens. So don't fall for that. Number one. Number two is you can come to a collaboratively agreed upon amount of time, like once a week, or instead of every 5 minutes I'm there, even backing it down to once a day, I'm going to look over this. And then the further between these check-ins that we can get, the better. But if you are having to stay on your child nonstop, they are not learning how to stay engaged. And then they're doing it so that they don't get in trouble instead of, I'm starting to get engaged in learning. By the way, make sure that you connect what they're learning. Ask them, how does what you're studying right now relate to this hobby or this goal? And help them connect the dots, because that will also get them more engaged. Back it down, but have an agreed upon time for those check-ins. Check in and say, what, as we've always said, what was your favorite part of the day? What was your least favorite part of the day? Which assignment has you most concerned? Tell me about that. You can ask very generic questions that aren't specific to this assignment. Did you finish this? And this does mean that sometimes a child is going to face a consequence, but I'm going to tell you something. Think about, you have a junior in high school who is on the soccer team, and they sometimes leave school early to go to tournaments. And the parents have always been the one to reach out to the teachers and say, okay, my child is going to miss this class today. What are y'all doing? Are there any notes about the upcoming exam? And can we scoot back when they turn this in, because they were sick yesterday, they're going to soccer today. And then they get out in the world. College expects these kids to be self-advocates. Jobs expect you to self-advocate, speak up for yourself. They are not prepared.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult. This is one of the hardest things we've probably talked about doing with kids on any of these shows, because we don't want to see our kids struggle. But it is through the struggle that growth happens. I didn't do this. This was the consequence, and I'm going to do better next time. What is the priority?
Yeah.
They bombed this quiz because they did not reach out to the teacher, but there are many more quizzes that can bring their grade up, right?
Yeah.
Or they get out in the world, they are not prepared at all. So maybe put it on an index card on your mirror so you can remind yourself why you're doing this, because it's hard. This is probably one of the hardest things for me as a parent, honestly.
Yeah.
But it is what works.
I feel similar even about like the reasons that I don't like to see them in pain because they've hurt themselves, especially if it's something that I feel like I could have helped them avoid. Yeah. I almost squash their feelings just because I feel guilty. I don't want to see them suffer. I don't want to see them struggle. So I'm like, oh, stop crying, I feel like so much of that is so true for parents in all those ways. So
yeah. And sometimes it's the opposite. Like they fell down, they scraped their knee. I mean, do we want that to happen to kids? No. But if we baby them too much, even like they didn't break a bone, they're not swollen, like they got a little scrape. If we're like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? Then they will make a bigger deal out of when small things happen, and their classmates are going to be thinking, what's wrong? This is not unloving. This is love that helps kids grow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important. I put up a quote on my my page today, Hidden Churn, about how one of the things that gets in the way sometimes is an adult's need for efficiency. I've got to run these errands. I got to do X, Y, Z for every single one of my kids. And I have 3 or 4 kids. I have this work project due, and we got to get this done.
Yep.
That is understandable. That is human nature. Understand, though, that will increase the pressure that the child feels. And so we cannot try to force kids to complete assignments on our timelines. They're going to, it will eat up their emotional bucket. And then they will just check out or lash out or shut down or have a meltdown. And they are checked out of learning.
Yes.
And so what can you do in your schedule to where, or just even for self-care, where they don't feel your stress and your urgency? Really important.
Yeah.
And then is there anything else? I think we've pretty much talked about most of the tips. So the way you communicate, not arguments, not confrontation, instead of directing and instructing, collaboration, open-ended questions, them solving their own problems. I am here as a resource for you. So is your teacher. What are some benefits of doing that? And even talking through, this could be a whole show by itself, how to prepare kids for teacher meetings. There is so much that goes into that. But just on a short level, we can just say very quickly, what do you think might be helpful to prepare you for the meeting with the teacher? You know, how are you going to remember what you discussed? What if you don't understand something she said? I wonder what you could do. Talk through some of those things we talked about so they benefit from those. And especially as they're getting older, I mean, and if they're going to college, talk to them about, or if they're not, the expectations of jobs or college. They will not coddle these students, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes study buddies, they need somebody to hold them accountable, and sometimes take an adult out of the equation and get a peer who is responsible. They will respond better, even though it's not fair. It's true. It's not fair. I had to do a callback from last week. It hurts sometimes, but it's true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What works, get it done. And then these resources between parent and child, it is such a good book about how to communicate with your kids. And I didn't want anybody to read this and say, he says not to ask why questions. Context is, why did you do that? It's how you say them. Why questions are open-ended questions. I am still huge on the why, but I love that book. And then you see, late, lost, unprepared, and this is about executive function. These issues are related to executive function. And that is not something that is usually thought about in schools for especially younger kids. Some schools are starting to know about executive function for middle and high school kids, but they start developing in infancy. Smart but scattered. Does that ring a bell with anyone?
Oh, sure.
Stephen Covey, everybody knows who he is, but there's also the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, not just of people. And then Sean Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And your kid's going to be okay building the executive function skills your child needs in the age of attention. All of these are excellent resources for you. I
love this. I feel like you really should get a percentage of what I buy from Amazon, because I am constantly looking up your resources and getting them for myself. I feel like so many of these tips are so applicable. Thank you so much for these great resources.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, this is one of the most draining. If you will get on board with this, and I know it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to encourage you to please do it anyway. Think about the weight lifted off of your shoulders. When my child failed this, big picture, what is the priority? If he learned from it, agree on how often you're going to have those check-ins, but you're not hovering. That frees you up to have time to yourself or to cook dinner, to not be going to bed late because you are sitting there being the taskmaster, getting them to get it done. Your kids are going to be more open when you must give input. You will not be the villain. I am here to support you. And if I don't hear from you, I'm going to check in once a night. I'm going to check in every couple of days, what's ever appropriate to your situation. Start backing it down.
Yeah.
When they start growing independence and autonomy and competence, and they're going to be more engaged, and that is going to get the mojo going to do more of the same.
That is the reward.
Yes.
I love that for you as a parent. And also, I think you do have to get, it's like when you're growing out your bangs, you have to get past the uncomfortable, like medium length that won't fit behind the ear, but like is too long to keep down in front. You have to grow out the bangs and be okay with that discomfort for a little bit.
I am such an analogy metaphor person. That is perfect. Like fist bump through the computer.
Yes. I love it. Well, as always, Heather, it's been a pleasure talking with you. If you want to follow Heather, if you're not already, follow her at The Hidden Churn, as you can see there. And here are the beautiful Brain Balance locations near you, including the new Woodlands location. Actually, you can see Heather a lot there right now as she's getting set up. Anything you want to add here at the end?
There's not, except Thursday at 3:30, Dr. Brian and I will be back talking about how to get the body-brain communication back the way it needs to. We talked about the autonomic nervous system, which is something people may not know they want to know about. But if your kids are having issues with holding their bladder, or their constipation, or digestion, or sleeping well, I mean, this relates to cognitive function, anxiety, all kinds of emotional distress, focus, memory. It involves our learning skills. It involves our physical health. And what we can do, our kids get in a fight or flight response. Sometimes we don't even know it. And we talked about signs of that last time and why it happens. And this week, we'll be talking about what to do to get things back in balance more.
Yes, this is what we can do with some of this extra me time we're going to have, because we're being a little more hands off, and we can tune in and listen to smart people talk about things that are going to help us get better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. And thank you to everyone out there who shared your time with us today. And I hope you have an awesome week.
Yes, we'll see you all soon.